Small. Wow, tiny.
You are currently listening to Tiny Table,
where we explore TRPGs you might not have heard of.
Whether big or small, we hope to cover them all.
Because we know that great things can come in tiny packages.
Black Mass has died. Grab your tarot deck, pack your pockets plenty with pomegranate seeds, and try not to swallow too much lake water as we dive into this post-mortem. Ooh.
What a fantastic game.
Yes, what a spooky and spectacular time. That was, we've done a small string now of more lighthearted, whimsical, even funny games, and haven't done something really this creepy for a little bit. And this was a great dive back into what I guess you could consider our roots as Tiny Table, since technically the first game that we had played here was Merkborg, which was sort of in those darker tones. I quite enjoyed what Black Mass had to bring to the table.
100%. And speaking of kind of the roots of the show, this was the game that I had initially shared in our, even before Merkborg, our introductory episode. We each shared a game that we looked forward to prospectively playing at some point. And Black Mass was my game. It was the game that when Holly was very first pitching Tiny Table to me, I was having the thought of, oh yeah, I've been looking for an opportunity to finally play Black Mass.
Yeah, when you told me about the game, this was the game that I was most excited about, and I have to say, it met, I can't say it met my expectations because I had no idea what to expect, but I loved playing it, and it totally blew any thoughts of what I thought the game would be, and I'm kind of glad that I went in blind into reading the rules because it was super fun, and unlike any game that I've ever played, I think it's very different than any game that we've played on the show. And something that I really enjoyed, because if you guys remember from Kids on Bikes, my biggest friction was the idea of the shared character. I found it was pretty clunky. I had some friction with it in Kids on Bikes and how it was done. And so there were some apprehensions going into this game because the whole game is sharing two characters. But I didn't feel that friction at all in doing it with this system.
Yeah, and I think what Black Mass really succeeds in terms of the shared character is that we all have our own personality aspects, right? We all control something unique, and with the Cairn system, it allows us to be able to claim control or cede control, where there's a very clear rules layout as to who is inhabiting them and what personality aspect we inhabit. I think it's a really elegant design on how to create a shared character, but still have something, unique that you can hold on to, as well as a more organized structure of how to share.
Yeah, in regards to the shared character, I definitely feel that because there were much more strict guidelines for how each person interacts with each of the two communally shared characters, it created a much more guided experience. I feel like with Kids on Bikes, we felt a little lost with what to do sometimes, where the picture for Black Mass on what to do with either character is much more clear-cut and dry. I think there's also the aspect that there is two characters to embody rather than just the one that really helps with that shared communal aspect. I feel like when it comes to just having everyone has an individual character and then there's one that's communal, the balance is kind of strange, but here Black Mass very clearly knows what it wants to do and how it wants you to do it. It takes itself very seriously, which I think is good. There is also some potential friction I see with it that I'll get into later, but overall as a whole, I think it definitely tackles the communally shared character aspect better than anything else we've played up to this point.
100%. I think a big part of that is that not only is it two communally shared characters, they are two defined characters. No matter how many games of Black Mass you play, you might explore different seasons, you might utilize different personas, but there will always be Catherine and there will always be Lydia. And I think the kind of bold choice to enumerate exactly who these characters are and say these are the characters this story is about makes the journey a lot easier to inhabit. It gives you those guardrails so you aren't just kind of flailing willy-nilly within the character and trying to figure out a point to hold on to. We've highlighted the idea that the different persona aspects give a sense of foundation in the control. I find that a part of that is it allows one to have the kind of selfish, my character wants the spotlight right now self-interest that is not endemic to the hobby, but it is kind of a mental bugbear to contend with for designing a game like this. It feeds that hunger without giving up the idea of these communal characters, and then having them be mechanically delineated in terms of, like, in Act 2, how long you get to control them, like you said, Neo, with the cairn. It makes everyone excited to seize control, where the instant, like, oh, you're done playing Lydia, well, I want to play Lydia now, because Lydia's cool. And then, okay, that person over there, they're playing Catherine, and maybe I'm still playing Lydia during a scene where I will see the Catherine I'm playing opposite shift persona importance partway through. So it lends itself to a lot of really intricate dynamics, but those dynamics are founded in the mechanics of play in such a way where they emerge pretty naturally and pretty intuitively. You don't really need to force it.
Yeah, you get all these different fun pairings of, we got numbered Catherine with Lydia O the Melody, or we have Morningstar Catherine with Lydia O the Toad. You've got these interesting little matchups. But when you step outside of the play and you see these multiple aspects, they're synthesized into one person. They're synthesized into this one Lydia, this one Catherine. So you eventually have, a Lydia who has a silent toad, a keening whistle, and a moonpiece. A really, really interesting little girl. I can't imagine when you start having 8 players or so, you've got so many different personality types. It makes for a really strange little girl.
Yeah, definitely, Neo. And kind of jumping off that, I actually have a question for you, Julian. So, kind of above board, I mean, we try to keep it pretty real and pretty actual here at Tiny Table, but sometimes we do have to tailor our play around the fact that we are doing a podcast, so that kind of led to us each only inhabiting our personas once for each character. Do you think that that is how you would run it, Julian, if we were off mic, or how do you think you would have handled that? Or, like, do you think you'd handle it differently at all?
I'm kind of two minds about it, because on a pacing level, I ultimately was pretty happy with the form it took in our play. But I also would want there to be chances to re-inhabit a persona subsequent times. I feel like that's the one aspect we truly didn't get to explore is, in an early scene, my keening whistle persona focused on this, and then due to the developments that occurred over the course of the story, when the keening whistle persona returns in a later part of the woods, it's changed in this way, or it's evolved, it seeks out a second Black Mass requirement, etc. So if we had like a lot of time and we were really doing kind of a luxuriously paced game, and if we were comfortable with the idea of the woods component being dramatically longer than both the prologue and the Black Mass at the bookends of it, then I'd be happy to kind of luxuriate in that space for longer. But I also feel like having this kind of essentialized tour of the characters led to a version of the story that felt free of fat, as it were. Like, if I were to, like, I could always come up with more creepy things to put in the woods. That's the nice thing about the woods. You can kind of just keep throwing creep shit in there and it's always going to work. But on a practical level, I don't know. I feel like 1-2 solid scares, they kind of naturally escalated and it rushed you into the Black Mass. I think that kind of punchy pacing led to a Black Mass that felt hungry and excited. And I think that if we had done it longer in the woods, the timbre going into the Black Mass would have been different. So I'd be excited on a subsequent off-mic exploration to chart out, like, how does it feel to get to the Black Mass in a world where it's been 2 hours of play, 2.5 hours of play since you were last playing the line of tarot, and it goes from feeling like the tarot drawing and the timeline enumeration is the majority of play to only being prologue and epilogue and not acts 1 and 3 out of leaving only 2 for the woods.
It's kind of interesting to hear you say that because I feel like where my mind goes in regards to our Black Mass playthrough is one of my largest complaints and one of my biggest thoughts, which is both a complaint, but also it's high praise, was I wanted to play so much more. I feel like I did not have enough time with each of the characters. There was a decent bit of confusion throughout the course of my playthrough. It wasn't anything that our lovely dungeon mistress Julian couldn't clear up for me with just like a couple of sentences or a brief explanation. So it leads me to believe that it's not an inherent problem with the rules, but I did have a lot of confusion about our pacing, about re-entering characters, about some of the stuff with the Arcana, and I felt really compelled to want to inhabit each character multiple times, especially because each persona is given multiple Black Mass requirements that are impossible to meet more than a singular one, essentially, if you are only inhabiting each one once. I think even if we got to do each of them just twice would be a drastic markup in how much each persona could get done. Because, like, in terms of the play with only inhabiting each character once, you might get, Toad Lydia with Dulcimer Catherine, and that's a very interesting dynamic. But because we only inhabited it once, we didn't get to see, Toad Lydia with Numbered. And, in this example, I think both of those were Holly's characters, so that wouldn't have popped up anyway. But the point remains that I would have loved to see the other side of each of these dynamics as well. And I would have loved to fill out more Black Mass requirements. And I feel like going into the Black Mass with additional requirements fulfilled could also lead to one that's like very juicy, very hungry, or at the very least has more context behind it. Again, my only sort of complaint with our play, not because of Black Mass, but because we do have to tailor it to be kind of that snappier, punchier experience just for listening quality, was I really want to inhabit each character so many more times than I did, which I think is a testament to the writing and especially to the snippets of each persona because they're so detailed and interesting in even just a few short sentences.
You're also a D1 yapper, so that makes sense.
It's true. I have to work with him, I know. But let's get into the Black Mass requirements a little bit. I think this was a really interesting thing because every persona gets, several? Like 3 Black Mass requirements that are entirely optional. For the Black Mass to work, in the rules it explicitly states that none of them have to be fulfilled, and that it also informs us that it's quite difficult to fulfill them. For the Black Mass to work, it has no impact mechanically at all, but it's still included. And so I think that's a really interesting design choice. Do you want to speak on that a little, Julian?
Yeah. So I initially had the thought that I felt a little strange about the idea that these things literally labeled in the rules as requirements were not mechanically requirements, right? Like, the rules as written say, quote, play continues in the woods until each player has completed the requirements for their Black Mass or until the deck is empty, or you're out of time. Then it's time for the Black Mass. So, like, definitionally, we fulfilled number 3, right? We were out of time because, you know, we're making radio here. But, you know, explicitly, on a mechanical level, the Black Mass is identical, whether it is very few requirements fulfilled or every single requirement fulfilled. The Black Mass itself plays the same. Initially, my thought was, oh, I wish the requirements had some sort of mechanical deliverable there at the end. Like, the more requirements you fulfilled, the more wishes you get at the Black Mass, yada yada. That was kind of my initial game designerly brain thinking of it when I read the rules. I read them and I thought, this feels like unfilled space. In play, though, my opinion kind of inverted on that, and I'm actually quite happy that the requirements aren't required. I would maybe rename them just to avoid that kind of discrepancy and that feeling of like, oh, required, but they're not. Because when we got to the Black Mass, the fact that it was mechanically unmitigated, the magic of the Mass, the witchcraft, was allowed to bloom and blossom for like as long as we wanted, right? Like as long as the woods had run for, that was our deck to run the Black Mass. And, you know, that kind of intuitively on a literal level does mean that the more you play and the more you go in the woods, the longer your Black Mass gets to go. But we hit the point where we were done with our Black Mass before even exhausting the small amount of cards that we had accumulated from our brief stint in the woods. So I feel like the average Black Mass is not going to come to an end because you run out of cards. It's usually going to come to an end because you feel you've hit a point of narrative satisfaction and cohesion. But on the way there, the lack of mechanical levering between the requirements and the Mass itself meant that the Mass was unmoored. It could be whatever Lydia and Catherine needed, and by ungamifying it, it felt magical. Like it felt like this reclamation of unmitigated power from women who had been heretofore dictated in their lives by these cards could now just go fucking bananas with them. So, and that wound up kind of wrapping back around thematically, where I had this character, this personification of the devil as the goat arrive, telling them to indulge. Like, you only get this one Black Mass, just take it and run, do with it what you can, which feels so in line with like what that kind of ritual is in this type of media.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Julian, and I think I feel split on it, maybe with a little more friction than you. Obviously, my lovely co-creators are very creative, so it was beautiful to see my co-creators' uninhibited role-playing and imagination in this space, but I did feel a bit of friction with the lack of fail states. And it's something that I don't know how much we'll get on mic. There were even times where I was like, oh, so I failed this. And was like, no, you don't fail. And I was like, oh, but I didn't draw the right card.
I mean, are you talking about during the Black Mass or in the woods?
In the woods.
Oh, I see.
And I guess the fail state is if you grab an Arcana card.
Yeah, major Arcana cards are kind of the fail state, and like overindulge. It's not like a hard fail state, but like ending without having any cards to commit to ending on your terms. I mean, not a fail state, but like it's a I get to make things worse state.
Yeah, so maybe we just got lucky, and that's why I feel like there weren't as many like quote-unquote fail states or failures. But maybe that's not even what the game is wanting. Maybe the game really is just about this uninhibited expression of freedom. But I think there was maybe a small part of me that wanted some more obstacles for the juice of it all. But maybe that's just not what Black Mass is, and it's on me to accept that.
I mean, if we even just think about the mathematics of complications occurring when you draw a major arcana in the, full tarot deck, that's the minority of cards. The majority of cards are going to be numbered, so your actual amount of failure or complication states is going to be your smallest pool. And especially if we consider our insane setup that had like nearly 10 major arcana, like right
so
in
much
the
major
back.
arcana right up front.
Oh my god, our chances for failure going into the woods were actually quite low. I think especially comparative to your average. I think we had a very unaverage experience with our setup leading into the woods. And so I definitely feel that, but it also doesn't necessarily seem like that's the intention based on just the mathematics. But it is kind of interesting, and I think that is where some of my confusion that I mentioned earlier comes into play, is the requirements aren't requirements. There's a complication but never a failure state. You're normally still able to do whatever you want, and I mean, it's pretty assumed that Lydia and Catherine will make it to the Black Mass. There's not like a kill state for either of them, and we were playing in the, the R-rated blood in the snow, most deadly, gory, graphic version we were playing in February. And despite that, I still felt like there was a pretty ease of exploration throughout our things that was maybe in contrast with my set expectations. I feel like I can understand you because I thought, maybe their lives are going to be on the line more, but they weren't. So I think I'm also of two minds in this as well, because one, the math, but also two, the theming of February. It's hard to say.
I think in response to the idea that y'all are wanting of a failure state of some sort, or a kill state, or something that would stop Lydia and Catherine from getting to the Black Mass, I think the game is pretty upfront with the fact that that is not an element of its intended play. Like, in the little paragraph it gives the proctor to read to the players up front, it says, "This story has several constants. Lydia and Catherine are alone, they are going to get where they're going, and they are dead set on getting there." This isn't a game about how 30% of the time Catherine and Lydia die like losers in the woods. This is a game about two bitches who do the Black Mass.
Fair.
These ladies are going to make it to the end. And I don't know why, as Mr. Unlucky, I was very happy that there was no fail state. Also, we were in a very perilous situation where we were both drowning, and I was like, is this it? Are we gonna die before we even get there? So I don't know what you're talking about. And I really like that, actually. This is a storytelling game. I like that there are these constants. I like the lack of a fail state. In so much in RPGs, they try to derive, some kind of narrative tension from, oops, because of some unknowable reason outside of your control, you fucked up. Just like real life. I'm like, I hate that. I like how much narrative control Black Mass gives to its players. This is a story game, and I want to tell a story. I don't want to, and not a story of, oh fuck, I fucked up, so I fail. This is
Joel and Ethan Cohen's The Black Mass.
So I actually really like that element of the Black Mass. And there are still the major arcana, there are the not as many successes, there are, I think, still, I would say, lesser fail states that allow to help to weave something creatively and narratively interesting without necessarily the, well, you rolled bad, so fuck you, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose it is kind of like I said. It doesn't seem like it's necessarily the message or the ethos of the game, but it is more to say I can understand where maybe some of the tonal dissonance might come from of reading Blood in the Snow for the description of February. And then, we did have some perilous moments, but having that security blanket of, well, we're gonna make it out in the back of my mind, I think for me took out some of the tension of, well, she can't drown. We'll go through a few rounds, we'll fix it. There isn't going to be a lasting consequence by the time we hit the Black Mass. Like you said, no matter how many requirements, we'll always get to the Black Mass the same. They're both always going to make it. And so even in these situations where, oh, we are drowning, I feel like I didn't feel the same amount of tension as maybe you did, Neo, because I had that in the back of my mind, we're gonna get there. And obviously I still wanted to respond to it, and all of us, I feel very grateful to have friends who are such great role players and actors and who always invest themselves in the characters in the moment, so we were able to act on the tension the scene was presenting. But as a player, for me, I think I can understand where Holly's coming from, not in terms that there needs to be a fail state that they won't make it, but the fact that they will just has a bit of contrast for me mentally.
Yeah, I actually think one of what I said of maybe I'm just looking for something that Black Mass isn't is just true. And I actually want to say on the drowning scene, each Lydia and Catherine have some bullet points of things that each of them can do. And it actually was very fun as numbered Catherine to use the wording in creative ways to explain how I got us out of a situation. So I think both things are true, and I think in any subsequent off mic play, I think I just have different expectations.
Yeah.
And I think that is just sometimes the growing pains, if maybe that's the right word to use, of always playing new systems, is that you go in thinking it's gonna play one way, and then you're playing it with everyone, and it just is sometimes different than what you expect. But that was also kind of the fun of it, of I was like, oh, okay. And then I think I tried to lean into this of like, well, if I'm not going to quote unquote fail or fuck up because of some mechanics reason, I can then be more creative in how I get myself out of situations because there's no mechanics telling me that I can't.
Yeah, I do think it could just be a reordering of expectations. Like you said, Holly, at the beginning of the game, you didn't know what to expect going in. And this is very true for me because I thought Black Mass was gonna be like an outer space horror game. I was not ready for it to be about witches and women in the woods. I don't know why, but I thought we were gonna be like in an abandoned spaceship with like dark horrors from the cosmos hunting us down. Like, I knew it was gonna be dark, but I did not get witches off of the name Black Mass for some reason. So I too didn't know what to expect going in and had to readjust on the fly, which might be some of where our dissonance comes from.
You're thinking of the Black Mass. He's down the hall killing astronauts in the other airlock. Speaking of witches and witchcraft, that's actually an element I really want to get into that I think is like, it's the great empty space of this game. And I'm very excited to get Will's opinion when we interview Will. Tune in next week for our interview with the designer, because we're gonna ask about this. So this game uses a tarot deck, and at no point anywhere in the rules does it tell you that the tarot meanings should matter or do matter, but it has you use them basically as iconography only, rules as written, in the opening act, in the prologue, as well as during the Black Mass. They have mechanical import during the woods section, sure, but it's a level of mechanical import that, like, you could do with a regular deck of playing cards. You're just checking against a suit that's like, that doesn't need to be tarot, but it is. And we went with the choice of having Neo read us out the divinatory meanings of the tarot as we drew them. And personally, I found that gave a bunch of additional nuance to the space where, like, at first going in, I was a little concerned. I was like, am I going to have to do a lot of work here as the GM? Am I going to have to do a lot of work here as the proctor? Am I going to have to constantly be coming up with a bunch of stuff unsupported? Because while I felt like the personas had a lot of very particular things to play off of, like their certain persona actions in the woods, most of them get an iconic, object to play with. They play with each other. I was worried that I'd be like, listen, buddy, go fish, go rewatch Robert Eggers' The Vavitch, and I hope you have some cool ideas about Massachusetts. And I was worried I'd be floundering, but just the support of having the tarot in a classical divining sense gave me, honestly, like, everything I needed. Like, Nia would say, like, oh, this one portends, like, a great journey, possible death, and a body of water. And I was like, oh, bet. Done. Okay, that's all I need. So I'm hugely interested in this game as a locus of witchcraft and the broader conversation about how that plays in with RPGs as a conversational folk hobby. This is like the least wargamey RPG I've played in a minute because it cares a lot about how you feel when you draw a card and not about like what the mechanical hard-coded output of that card would be.
Yeah, there was a lot of magic in this game. As we were playing it, I was feeling the tarot tingles, you know, everything kind of felt magical. Things were coming together. Cards would come up that we were like, no way, this card is so perfect.
Bro, it's the Page of Cups, bro.
Yeah, or like, or when we had like sequences, right? It gets very kind of numerology-esque. We had like page into knight into queen. You know, there's a lot of repeating symbols, numbers, patterns, coincidences, pure magic. I mean, there's a great piece of advice that Julian's father gave to her, which was, what's it? Say a prophecy?
Oh yeah, the one of the first pieces of RPG advice my dad ever gave me. Piece of advice one was, you just gotta create a town and there's a problem there. Everything else comes from the players. Correct. Then piece of advice two was, give them a prophetic dream. No, you don't need to know what it means. You don't need to have any plans for it. It will come true.
Yeah, I feel like hitting a straight flush is different when the cards are telling you you're gonna trans your gender next year, you know? Like, it's like...
Not the Estradol Joker.
I love that mechanic in Balatro. I thought it was really daring.
Oh, so that's what it means to hit E in Balatro.
Oh my god.
Wow.
I don't think we're gonna top that. I think that's just about everything we have to say about Black Mass. Awesome
E also
game.
stands for ending.
This game rocks. Absolutely love this game. Cannot wait for our interview with Will Jobst, who is the creator of this game, as well as some other games on my shelf that I'm very excited to play in hopefully the near future.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all very much for joining us for this post-mortem. Please tune in next week for our interview with the designer of Black Mass, and I hope y'all have a lovely, witchy rest of your day. Goodbye, everyone.
Ta-ta.
Hi, and thank you for listening to our podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, then we'd really appreciate if you left us a review. If you really like what we do here and want to support us further, you can join us at patreon.com/tinytablepodcast. Our business email is also open for inquiries at tinytablebusiness@gmail.com, and all of our socials can be found in the episode description for any shenanigans you might want to follow. Till next time, see ya!